Hi there, welcome to Lilly-Tree. Today we're making this wire wrap pendant. So let's get wrapping. For this pendant, we need 1mm diameter wire, which is 18 gauge, 0.4mm diameter wire, which is 26 gauge, and a bead, mine's 8mm diameter. And the tools we need are chain or flat nose pliers, bail making or round nose pliers, wire cutters, a small hammer and block, and a file. To shape the frame, we're starting with 25cm, which is about 10 inches of the 1mm diameter or 18 gauge wire. And we're going to fold that in half. So we'll just find the approximate centre first. And then we want to make a sharp fold in it. So those two wires are almost lying together. Just leave a small gap in between for the weaving. We then want to turn that 90 degrees and just put a gentle bend in both wires. Then holding one wire in each pair of pliers, we'll twist slightly, just to open them up a bit and make that point at the end. Then we can decide where we're wanting to put our diamond and our bead. And we're just going to be working with that upper wire for the time being. I find it's best to measure this by eye, but just for reference, this is 2.8cm from that point, or 1 1/8 inches. And then at that point, we're going to make a bend, which is the first part of our diamond shape. And to get a sharp corner, it's best to just over bend it slightly and then pull it back out again. We can then use the bead to work out where the top of our diamond wants to be. And we're looking at the next side that we're going to make being parallel to that first piece. We want a slight gap between the bead and the frame when we're finished. Then we can make that bend exactly as before, but a bit sharper. And then if we measure the side we've just made, we can use that measurement for the next side. So the inside of this diamond is 9mm, or 3/8 of an inch, but remember yours might be slightly different. We can then use that measurement along the next part of our wire and make the third bend of the diamond. And check that the two opposite sides of that diamond are parallel. And there's just a little bit of space between the frame and the bead. We then want to turn this working piece of wire back up to lie on top of where it came from. And we're going to run it around two sides of that diamond. So when we're finished, that wire sits on top of the first part of the frame. And then we can just make a gentle curve in the end. We'll be taking that outer wire around to match the diamond shape later, but it's easier to keep it straight for now to give access for the wrapping. Now we're ready to start wrapping, so we'll take a length of the 0.4mm or 26 gauge wire. Mine's 1.5 meters, but we probably only need about 1.20 meters or 4 feet. We'll take the end of the weaving wire through at the point where we folded those base wires. Make sure it's wrapped on tightly. And wrap 5 times on that outer wire. We're then going to take the weaving wire through between those two base wires and wrap that inner wire, or the top wire, twice. Then we'll take the weaving wire through between those two base wires again and wrap 5 times on that outer wire. Then through between them, wrap twice on the inner wire, and we're going to continue wrapping 5 times on the outer wire, then 2 times on the inner wire around this frame. Now I've just made the 5 wraps on the outer wire, and we're up to where the diamond starts. So this time we've gone through between the 2 wires as we did before, but then we're going to take the weaving wire through the middle of that diamond and wrap both the wires that are forming the side of that diamond together. Then we'll do the same again to make the 2 wraps like we did before on the single wire. Make sure that's all nice and neat. And then go back over to the outer wire and wrap 5 times. Then when we're ready to make those 2 wraps again, we'll go through the middle of the diamond and wrap twice around both of those inner wires that are forming the diamond. So we're keeping the same 5-2 weave, but we're just wrapping over both layers of that diamond. And once we get to the corner of the diamond, we can make the corner in the outer wire just to follow around the outside of that diamond. And then we'll continue with the 5-2 weave. Wrapping over both of those inner wires again as we did before. Now once we get to the middle of that side of the diamond, we want to add our bead. So we're just coming over to wrap the inner diamond twice. And we're going to take the wire through the middle of that diamond, thread on the bead, and then wrap over the other side of the diamond, a full wrap once, and the second time we wrap round, we'll take the wire back through the bead. Make sure that's all nice and tight, and then continue making those 2 wraps on the 2 inner frame wires. And back over to 5 wraps on the outer wire. And then we're just going to continue this 5-2 weave around the rest of the side of that diamond. And once we're at the top of the diamond, we'll continue on up those 2 free ends of wire, up to where we want the bail to be. Now, for these 2 wires at the top, the left-hand one we're going to use to make the bail, which is just going to be a simple hanging loop. So we'll just kink it forward with a flat nose or chain nose pliers, move that other wire out of the way a bit, and then use the bail making pliers or round nose pliers to make a loop. We can then snip off the excess and close that loop. We then just need to decide what to do with this last wire. And I think the left side of that diamond just needs a little bit of finishing off too. So we're just going to bend that wire around, make a small loop at the top there, and take it around to sit outside of the diamond. can just use the weaving wire to coil that loop. And then as we meet the weave from before, take that weaving wire around one of the frame wires in that weave and through the weave, just to help hold everything together. We can then continue coiling up to the point where that wire is coming out from underneath the weaving. Now we're going to continue that 5-2 weave from before, but we have a choice over which wire to put the 5 wraps on. And I'm going to switch it from how it was before to have the 5 wraps on the inner wire. This will provide design interest, but also help to tie in where that bead's held. So as we come out from under the weave, we take that weaving wire over to the inner wire that's making the diamond frame. And wrap 5 times. Or to make sure it's symmetrical, we can wrap down to where the 2 wraps started on the other side. We'll then take the weaving wire over, wrap twice on that outer wire, and then back over and wrap 5 times around the diamond. And as we get to the corner, shape that outer wire as we did before. Now I've got a little bit carried away here. I should have stopped weaving as we made that last bend in the outer wire to sort out the end. So it will be better to do this just as we've made that bend in the frame wire before we start weaving it in. But I'll work with what we've got. And we're going to trim that wire just where it meets the frame. And to keep the weave where we want it, we're just going to hammer the end of that wire. And I'm going to use my new mini raising hammer for this, as it's really going to help get into tight spaces. Before I would have used my riveting hammer, which will also do the job, just be careful. You don't want to hammer that weaving wire. So we're just going to carefully hammer the end, just so it splays out a little bit. And then file off any burrs on the end of it. Then we can move that back into place and continue with our weaving. So we'll just continue wrapping 5 wraps on that inner wire and 2 wraps on the outer wire. Can get a little bit fiddly at this point. And the wraps on the inner wire, we're just trying to make it just so the wraps with the bead won't move along the wire. Then we can get 2 last wraps on that outer wire. And make sure it's in the place that we want it to be. And they shouldn't be moving down towards the end because of that hammering. Then we'll move across and put a few wraps on that inner wire, just as many as we can fit in. Then we'll trim off the excess. We can trim that piece that we started with. Make sure the end's tucked in and flush with the frame. And our pendant is finished. If you enjoyed the video, why not head to this playlist for more like it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.